Let me try this again. Trustee Bradall?
Here.
Trustee Brocchini?
Here.
Trustee Doggett?
Here.
Trustee Levin?
Here.
Trustee Villalobos?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The district digitally records the audio and video portion of the meetings. All recordings are kept in the superintendent's office for 30 days and are available during that time period for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. Item 6, report out on closed session topics. The board met in closed session regarding public employee performance evaluation, the superintendent's evaluation. The board voted 5-0 to approve the superintendent's performance evaluation goals with modifications as discussed during closed session. Item 7, approval of the minutes. Are there any questions regarding the minutes of August 5th, 2020? And I need each trustee to.
No questions.
Okay.
No questions.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 5th, 2020?
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Campos, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, can I get clarification on the second, please?
I second, but
Vern, I think.
else did too.
Okay, so I'll put Laverne. Okay. Taking a vote now, Trustee Bradall,
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Levin,
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be approved with one motion, which is not debatable and which requires a unanimous vote for passage. If any member of the board, the superintendent, or the public so requests, any item shall be removed from the section and placed in the regular order of business following approval of the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the approval of the agenda and consent agenda?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Campos, will you please take the vote?
Yes, Trustee Bradall,
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Levin,
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 9, communications. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda items or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. First up, LSEA.
Good evening. LSCA is eager to hear about your conversation for the agenda item about having LSCA and CSEA representation at meetings. We would love to consult and be available to answer any of your questions that you may have as we're going through this what are we even calling this, distance learning hybrid model of education that is happening might be lead you to a better understanding of our needs and perspectives. And tomorrow we are going into negotiations, and we hope that it's a fruitful meeting and we are able to meet the real needs of teachers and students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have CSEA.
Yes, this is Jerry Newland, president of CSEA, and we are certainly in concurrence with everything that Megan just said. We very much would like to be involved, especially during this time. The daily changes, everything is happening, so quickly. So we certainly concur with what Megan had to offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item, we are on 9C. So people wishing to address the board. And I see one in the Q&A area. Oh, but that's for, perfect, 9C. So we have Dawn, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. Is it Rega or Rij? I'm not sure. But you may speak for 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Hi, my name's Dawn Rigi.
Thank
I'm a parent of a student at Ortega Elementary School, and I just wanted to publicly thank the teachers and staff for their hard work in ensuring that the students had materials needed for the beginning of the school year. My daughter and I went to the first grade pickup day this week, and we were provided with a bin that was just incredibly organized with subject area materials. And I have no idea how the teachers were able to accomplish this in such a short amount of time. And I just wanted to say, in the most stressful and different of beginning of school years, the teachers and staff were so happy to see the students. And that just brought a lot of joy to my child's life right now. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else want to give public comment? Now is the time. Okay, moving on. Item 9D, correspondence. Superintendent Olson, you are muted if you're trying to talk right now.
I have no correspondence.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Item 9E, Board Superintendent Communications. Who would like to start?
I can start.
Great.
Since the last meeting, I attended the Equity Network through Jefferson Union High School District. And I'm just curious if we've already hired Nicole, the one who would be leading our equity networks in the future. And the work that they're doing over there is really thoughtful and centered around changing the culture of our institutions. And I really feel like that is something that we need to do, because I truly feel that we are not trying to be inequitable, but I think that we have certain policies or practices that have been going on for so long, and that we need to address them and just work towards changing them. And so I really felt that was beneficial. I also attended the Welcome Back to School event, and very positive. It's, I wish we could do more positive things throughout the year like this. Maybe focusing on, something that a school does or a student excels in for presentations. This one was talking about how long staff has been with the district. So I really appreciated that. And the last one I attended was the anti-racist values. And I kind of felt like I was thrown into a program that was maybe going on already. So I think I'm going to try to watch it again. I attended that with Superintendent Olson. Also, I think this is something that we need to focus on, is being anti-racist. And I don't mean that we are, but just focusing and educating ourselves on that topic. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I would like to go. This, even though I attended the back to school night and back to school event, I was on my phone, so I couldn't speak during that, but it was still great. But I wanted to take some time today to remind everyone, our teachers, our staff, our parents, that right now we just had another Black man shot by the police. We also had a white supremacist who went and killed 2 people last night. And it's important that you all take a moment to understand that Black and brown children and adults have an added fear to their lives right now. Like the pandemic, the distance learning, the pandemic is very difficult. But if you are Black, you have an additional amount of fear, not just from the police, but from people who have guns, who are going around killing people. And this causes a mental fatigue. I'm experiencing it. It's a mental fatigue that makes it harder for kids to learn. It makes it harder for them to participate. So I wanted to bring this to you all's attention, to be aware that if you have a Black child or brown child or anybody who is not white, who is looking at the television and knowing that people are getting killed that look like them, that's scary. So if you have a child that is, seems a little bit tired or doesn't seem like they really want to fully participate, take a moment to understand that they may be experiencing this very serious mental fatigue. We are tired. It's a very serious thing. And I want you guys to be aware of that, because it's more important than ever for everyone to be aware of it. It's more important that we know that this is going on so that we can address it, that we are fully capable of addressing it, because it's right in front of us. So I just wanted to say that, because like I said, I am experiencing this mental fatigue. So I know that the children are. So just wanted to put that out there, wanted to make everyone aware, wanted to make sure that you all think about that, especially when we're dealing with equity, we're dealing with, just the pandemic in general. That's enough stress, but then you add this little bit of stress, or not even, you add this greater stress on top. Kids are afraid for their parents. They're afraid for their family members. They're afraid for themselves. And it's a very unstable time. And we have people who are stoking this racism and stoking it and making it seem like it's okay. So just wanted to put that out there. Wanted to have you all think about what it is like to every day have to operate and be normal while having also on top of that, the fear of your life every day.
Thank you.
Trustee Berdal, do you want to go next, or Trustee Brocchini?
I could go ahead and go. First of all, thank you, Kai, for your comments. And I appreciate so much coming straight from you and being reminded there's so much going on right now. So thank you. I have been on a few calls. One of them was the Office of Education call, and it happened to be right as the fires were starting last week. And so they were a little bit panicked and overwhelmed with having to deal with fires on top of COVID, but they were dealing with it. I was also on the SAMCETA call with the elected officials of the county. One thing that there is a lot of voting nervousness right now, and whether our votes will make it to where they need to go when the time comes. But one of our county officials has actually passed a bill through the state, and there is a website called where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. And it will track your ballot from the day it's mailed to your house and then all the way back. And it will tell you when it's received, so you know the entire path of your ballot here in the state of California. So I encourage, I guess 250,000 people signed up yesterday. So I'd go ahead and it's easy enough to sign up, do that. San Mateo County still on the watch list, and that will probably be for a while. And I also attended the Welcome Back to School event. And I'd also like to just say, once again, thank you so much to all the teachers and staff that worked all summer long with constant observation and sometimes criticism about how you were going about it. But thank you so much for putting all your heart and soul into this. And I know it's been quite a lift, but the kids I'm hearing good things. And I know personally my family's happy and my daughter's really excited about her school. So, and like I mentioned earlier, I think, or I guess I mentioned after 6 months of being home, I think the kids are really excited to have things going on daily. So anyway, that's my statement for today.
Thank you. Trustee Bradall?
Okay, I was in a lot of the same Zoom meetings as Linda, so the county weekly meeting with the elected officials. And in addition to tracking your ballot, there are ways to drop them off in person ahead of time, even in drop boxes. So I'm going to look more into the drop boxes because I think driving them over there might be worth the effort, the extra effort. Also the San Mateo County Office of Ed call and the welcome back call with the teachers and the retirements and all the years of service. And then helping, although he did all the work and the planning, Mr. Unbehagen with the music for 3rd through 5th, got goodie bags, over 1,000 goodie bags sent out to all the students for them to pick up with their items. And they have do-re-mi cards and a recorder and the practice pad with chopsticks and, to practice drumming and conducting and things like that, that he put a lot in accompanying videos, and he put a lot of work into that. And I was lucky enough to be able to just help him assemble those. So just a small help, but I think the kids are really going to enjoy that.
Thank you very much. So I attended some of the same things that everybody else did, the Welcome Back to School last week. I was in attendance there, and that was good. I also wanted to just thank the staff. I went to pick up school supplies and materials last week at Cabrillo, and everything went great. Just so thankful that we have such passionate and committed staff that have been putting in so much to make sure that this has been going smoothly, despite some hiccups like the student information system. I'd like to say that that's going to be the last hiccup for the rest of the year, but probably not the case. So I feel confident that we're going to be able to meet all the challenges that are forthcoming. The other thing that I partook in was the California Practitioners Advisory Group. It's an appointed group at CDE that I've talked about before. So we had a meeting talking about California's accountability system, and the wheels are still spinning there, moving ahead. So we talked about things like limiting the number of colors in the 5x5 accountability matrix to try to make it more stable, so you don't have a lot of jumping around of schools, like moving 2 colors in 1 year. We also talked about the learning continuity plan, and I expect we'll be talking about that more in future board meetings. And then also talking about data systems in California, and having the CDE and the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing are actually going to have signed an agreement, so they're going to be sharing data to make sure that teacher assignments are well aligned. That is, teachers are teachers have the correct certifications for the classes that they're teaching. So a little bit there. I think the only other thing that I wanted to mention that hasn't been mentioned yet is we all know that there have been raging wildfires going on all around us. Not only is it affecting us directly, but I'm sure almost everybody knows somebody or knows somebody who knows somebody that's been affected. So I just want us to all to think about that as well, and think about how we might be able to reach out and help out those who are in need, who may be displaced from their houses. Okay, so that's it for me. So let me see. Item 10, district business. District goals. The district values the goals provided in our local control accountability plan, LCAP, and strategic plan. All of our district board agenda items are tied to these goals. One or more goals are listed in the description of each board agenda item. The details for each of those district goals can be accessed on our Agenda Online public page or by visiting the district website, www.pacificasd.org, under District Administration, Board of Trustees. Item 10A, LSEA, CSEA participation in board meetings. Superintendent Olson.
Sure, I'll kick this back off. So at our previous meeting, Trustee Villalobos requested that we discuss how LSEA and CSEA could participate in board meetings during this pandemic time. And so just to recap our conversation is that just some of the pieces that were brought up were what are the ways that we could hear from LSEA and CSEA? And I think it was determined that that just more time was needed for discussion and particularly what we wanted to achieve from that. So tonight, so we discussed that on August 5th and that we asked that we bring that back for future discussion.
I can start on that if you'd like.
Great.
Okay. I took a lot of notes. I know that we had discussed adding more time to how long LSEA and CSEA get a talk from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. I just kind of want to start a clear slate because I have done a lot of thinking about this, and ever since coronavirus started, it's changed how I look at communication with our stakeholders, LSEA and CSEA. And the reason is because this is something that affects all of us, not just the students, not the families, but every single person. And and even beyond that, even my mother, even your mother, our extended families. So I feel like we need to hear more from our partners while we're going through this time of COVID. And so one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about was expanding communications with them during the coronavirus times. And the reason why is because all of us are in this together, and we need to know what our frontline staff and teachers are experiencing with our children. This is something that we have never been through before. So I think the more information we have, the better. Only the kids are going to benefit from everybody collaborating and sharing information. I've done some research, and over 400 teachers, staff members, superintendents, and board members have passed away from COVID. So like I said, it's not just one group of people, it's all of us. The other thing is that we are receiving updated information almost daily. And sometimes this is changing how we are going to be going into the classrooms or interacting with other employees. And so that is another reason to start it. The other one is that, you know, I work at a school and I firsthand get to see the stress that is on the maintenance people, the teachers. And so I just feel like we need to look at it and see if this is something that we need to collaborate on. And then the other thing is, how can we do that? We can make a task force or a committee, and the committee or task force, whatever we want to call it, would be made up of 2 admins, 2 CSEA, 2 LSEA, 2 principals, the superintendent. And this would be in hopes of these people, these leaders, being able to look at all the information that we're receiving, the science, the data, what's coming down from Gavin Newsom, and updating the board every month in a meeting, putting an actual agenda item that, says task force update, and letting the committee choose who's going to be the speaker, on a monthly basis. I just feel like until coronavirus is gone, we all need to do this together, and it needs to be on the agenda every single month. So that's just how I'm feeling. I feel like we're all in this together, that everybody needs to have a voice before we start moving to different stages of reopening. I think that, this is something that, I've been getting a lot of pushback from. And the reason is because it would mean changing our culture. Generally, we're separated. Generally, here's the board, here's the superintendent, here's LSEA, and here's CSEA. So, we haven't had a pandemic before, but I think we all need to come together and have a task force. That's just how I'm feeling right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So do I have comments and questions? Comments and or questions?
So I just quick question. This is a shift from having someone kind of be on the board meeting, like as not as a voting member, but speaking at a board meeting, to now having a task force just to have a regular agenda item to update us. I just want to see if that was the change.
That is the change, but it would be creating a task force or a committee and then having that committee on the agenda. The committee would be made up of 2 admin, 2 LSEA, 2 CSEA, the principals, so that we can get updates every month on what's happening with the science and the data in coordination with our classrooms. And so, does that answer your question, Kai?
Yeah, I just wanted to I know that before you were talking about having somebody on the board, or not on the board, but at the board meetings every, meeting speaking. But this makes it simplifies it, because that was really complicated. We were getting into a space that was a little muddy. So this helps.
Yeah. Well, I was like, okay, I'm not being clear, because, it just wasn't coming out the right way. And so I wrote things down this time, and it's pretty simple when you think about it. This is coronavirus. I'm not taught, last year or the year before, meeting with LSEA or CSEA, that was a different thing. Right now we're dealing with COVID, and I believe that everybody should have a voice in what we are going to do as far as moving forward to the next stages. And I think that means changing our culture a little bit and how we relate to our partners. And then also having these designated leaders looking over the science and the data and making a recommendation, possibly to the superintendent and then to us so that we can hear it. But most importantly, there is just so much information out there right now. We need to have an organized group of people who are looking at everything.
I have a question, Dr. Olson. Do you meet weekly now with LSEA and CSEA? I mean, separately, I believe, but do you have weekly meetings already?
We do during the summer and during this period of time. And then outside of the pandemic, we've always done right before the board meetings. So yes, we have been doing that.
So would this thought be maybe adding just a couple people to that existing meeting, so that's not adding necessarily more work on your already overloaded schedule? Would it be appropriate for maybe the extra people on this task force to be added into that meeting, or to half of that meeting or something?
We could do that. I think I think we actually have discussed this with LSEA around a task force and a committee making decisions about when we come back. And that happened outside of negotiations. It's not a negotiable item in terms of coming back. And one of the things I said is I think that the decision is the superintendent's decision that gets recommend, or it would be a recommendation that I would make to the board, and it would be the board's decision about when to come back. I think this task force makes it a committee decision around what criteria we use, when we would come back. So that would be, in terms of my conversations with LSEA, I did say that I would certainly consult with both LSEA and CSEA around concerns that they have, but would be making the recommendation to the board. So that would be a change in practice.
So Trustee Villalobos, thank you so much for clearly laying this out. This has a lot more clarity and focus as to what the motivation is here. And if I get it correctly, it is really about trying to problem solve and determine how best to move forward in the interests of students and their families as we go through this pandemic and come out of it. So I think that this is very different, and as Trustee Doggett said earlier, that this helps clarify things for me because it wasn't really clear what the purpose of this was. So it sounds good to me. My one concern is that in order for this task force to be ultra focused and productive towards its goal, I don't want there to be a conflict with both management and the unions bringing in bargaining into this process because it's very, very different. The goal here is to try to problem solve and determine the best way forward in a time of crisis and not try to bargain on either side for what's best for either side. It's really trying to come up with solutions to problems that are best for children and their families. And I just want to make sure that that's what's kept in mind. It's really difficult to disentangle those things. We could say, oh, no, we're not going to bring in negotiations here at all or bargaining. But, I just want to put it out there that it's probably a lot easier to say that than to practice that. So I just wanted to, go into this thinking about this with my eyes wide open. So that's my 2 cents here.
And I think that the final recommendation would have to come from the superintendent, and maybe if there was a task force, they could give their opinions or their suggestions. But I do think that it shouldn't be a switch to be a committee decision, that it should stay the superintendent's decision in the end.
And for me,
I'm sorry, please.
Just for me, the only thing is I'd like just a little more clarity on what the exact committee or task force is. And I think that might help us as far as making sure we're not veering off the road into negotiations or so anyway, because I get the overall overarching idea, but I definitely want everybody involved and I want to hear everybody's voice, but I want to make sure we're really clear on what the objective is of the task force, if that's what we decide to do.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard here, and I might not be completely correct, is that there are already some discussions going on, but this would kind of formalize those discussions into a task force that happens behind the scenes. That is outside of our public meetings here. But then there would be a reporting out of the task force at every board meeting, and I think that's a good thing. To hear what ideas have come up and what directions the task force has decided on. And so I just also want to reiterate that bargaining shouldn't be part of this, and really it's not always easy to find consensus on the direction that you should go, and that's a huge hurdle for. I mean, that's the key challenge for this task force, right? Is for everybody to get on the same page and decide this is the best direction to go.
And Jesse, I think everybody had some great questions there. You know, as far as negotiations, Heather, what did you say about this wouldn't be for negotiations? I mean, it can't be for negotiations, but what I'm hearing is we're back to the old ways that we're communicating with LSCA, CSCA. And like I said, I know this is difficult because it's changing our culture and some of the ways we do things. I'm not sure, you know, if this has ever been done before, but we've never been in a pandemic. And I know everybody's thinking of the structures. And of course, we're always going to take superintendent's recommendation, but ultimately it's going to be, you know, up to us and what we vote on. And the problem that I'm having, and I don't know if you guys are, is there is so much information coming out from the state, the CDC, the county, and then there's also, you know, what our frontline workers are doing. And our frontline workers are the teachers, the maintenance, you know, our food service people. I'm not hearing, you know, everything that is happening, you know, out there while they're educating. And so they're doing a very difficult task when they're trying to change in how they're educating our kids. And I think, you know, we have committees for everything. We have health committees, you know, what food to serve, what food not to serve. I'm just not sure why we don't have a committee where we're dealing with the health of our entire community. It's not just the people who are going to school, but when those people go home, you know, they're meeting with their families, their parents, their grandparents. And so I feel like this is important enough where we need to hear everybody's voice on when we are supposed to move forward to the next stages. For me, I know as a board, we agree in a whole, you know, so we voted on things, but I'd like to see more clarity and I'd like to see more of a plan, even if it's just in case, you know, this is what we're going to do. And so I think the leaders, you know, the ones who are in the schools, teachers, food service workers, maintenance people, the principals, you know, what challenges they're having. And then also at the district level with the admin. And, you know, I think if we could all agree that it's not going to be in negotiations and that we're going to stick to keeping, you know, what's the best for the kids and keeping everybody safe and healthy, I think it would be something that's worth a try. Also, adding it permanently until coronavirus is over. We don't know how long this is going to last. We're coming into the winter season where there could be more challenges. Keeping it as an agenda item so that not only the board members are informed on what these leaders are discussing and how they're feeling about moving forward, but also for the community. A lot of the parents don't know. They're not privy to everything that we're privy to. There's PTO presidents who are, but making the information available to all of them to let them know that, hey, we're all trying to collaborate. We're all trying to work together so that we can make the best decision for everybody when we're moving forward to the next stage. And so I apologize if I was not getting the point through last time because some of the questions that were coming, no, they are not board members. They are a task force or a committee that is watching the health data, the science, all of the different changes that are happening weekly and daily. Does that answer the question? Some of the questions?
I think that this is helpful information. It seems that the main question of focus here is really on the re-entry to in-person learning. Is that correct? Because I was kind of thinking the task force might be a little broader than that, talking about, you know, how are we delivering programming while we're still in distance learning, or when we go to the hybrid, you know, which is part of partially in-person learning. And so I thought I sort of originally thought that it was a little broader, Trustee Villalobos. Of course, that's a very important decision of when do we go back to in-person learning. But is it just that, or is it also broader than that? I guess that's my question.
Well, thinking of, what I'm proposing, it's geared towards the health and safety of the employees and the students and the families returning to school, back to 5 days a week. So in order to do that, we all know that there's the science and the data that we need to look at. So designating some of our leaders to be on a task force, I've already said it, 2 admin, 2 CSEA, 2 LSEA, 2 principals, the people who really know what's going on in the site levels, and the ones who are hearing things from parents. And but really what it is for more information getting out to everybody, us collaborating. And I know that it's changing, some of the culture that we've been in for a long time. And it's only, I can't tell you exactly when, but during the processes of coming back to school, I just kept asking myself, how are these people feeling about it? How are the parents? How are the students? How are the teachers? How are, all the CSEA? How is everybody feeling about this? Because it's their health that they're putting at risk. And so I just think that everybody should be able to have a voice in that, and that the task force can be in charge of gathering all this information, and then looking, well, we have gone down in our cases lately, but we're still on the watch list. So making a recommendation to Superintendent Olson on what they think is best for the students and for themselves, really. And bringing it to the board every regular meeting so that we know exactly what they're discussing, and so that everybody can be on top of all the information that's coming through.
Okay, can I say, Laverne, the county Office of Ed meetings that are weekly, they were at the beginning of this, they were 3 days a week, but they are gathering all that scientific evidence. They are working with the state. They're setting out all those plans for returning and under what regulations and what situations that the schools would return. And that, they have been the master voice. They have all that information. So I think we'd be duplicating that and without as much access as they have. If there was a task force that could be broader, like Jesse said, where it would be issues that come up with parents distance learning, with the teachers and the staff with distance learning, or with different situations like that, or health concerns, that it was more on that level. I think the upper level needs to stay with the Office of Ed. And then that final decision on how and when to come back to school needs to be the superintendent and the county Office of Ed. But a task force that could give the opinions of the level of the staff, the teachers, the parents, the PTOs, and reporting out to us, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I think as far as, researching the scientific evidence and stuff like that, we need to rely on the county Office of Ed and our the health director through the county.
I completely understand what you're saying, Elizabeth. I think what you're talking about is kind of like the trickle down effect. We have all this information and all these really important people in the county and at the state who are gathering all this information. But is it really getting down to the teachers? Is it really getting down to the families? Is it getting down to that site level? And so
you're talking about having them try to do all the same research on their own. That's a duplicate of
that's not what I said. They would be gathering the information that's coming through, and they'd be evaluating it and looking at it and looking at if it's safe for everybody to go back to school. And so I understand. I don't know if you know, but I've watched 6 different board meetings from different areas. Everybody is doing something different. And so they're all getting the same information from the state, from the counties, from their local. So, you know, I understand that, but in the end, it's going to be, how are we going to service our community and our parents and our children and our teachers and our workers? It's going to be up to us, because not everybody is doing a cookie cutter kind of plan going back to school. They're all doing their own deal. And so even, you know, where I work, it's a totally different plan. They have a principal for their distance learning virtual school, you know, so things are different in every district. And so I can understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying we need to bring it down to the local level, and we need to hear the voices of everybody in the community.
I do feel like the county and the county office of ed have been very good with keeping us informed. Any of the board members can be on the meetings every week, and keeping Dr. Olson informed. But like I said, if it was a task force, maybe the piece we're not seeing as much or don't have as much access to is the information from the parents and the staff and the teachers. If they focused on that and gave us and Dr. Olson that information, and we're also getting the other from the county, to put that information together, it would be our, you know, Dr. Olson's decision and our decision. So we'd be putting those 2 pieces together. So if it was a task force that focused on what they know best, which is their classrooms and their teachers, but to be making the other the other decisions, I think need to come from the county office of ed.
I think what Laverne is trying to create is a community effort, our own community. Even though we are getting information from the county, we are our own district. And I think collaborative effort, collaborative work is what the point of the task force would be. Am I in the vicinity, Laverne, of what you're trying to create here?
You are right there, Kai.
So it's not so much, you know, getting information from the task force, but it's the collaborative work that can come out of that task force, so that we can work better together with our teachers and our staff, that we have an internal communication system that allows freely information that we may or may not get, simply because we don't have free communication between the teachers and the board. So a task force, I think, is what she's trying to create is not necessarily a new information resource, but a collaborative effort, a collaborative resource for our district. So I think that's where you were going. I think that's what you're trying to do. I do see that would be helpful.
Well, I think the collaborative information, like I said, of the teachers and the staff and so forth would be good, but I feel really strongly that the decisions have to remain with the superintendent, and that it wouldn't be the task force. They could make their feelings known, their worries, their opinions, stuff like that voiced, but I don't think the committee should be making the decision. That should stay with Dr. Olson.
Trustee Brocchini, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I sort of am. Do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I guess the thing I'm thinking is we need to have it maybe not be about COVID-19 at all. Maybe it needs to just be a distance learning task force. And within that, we can bring in the information about why we're there in the first place, about COVID-19 and informing people. But I kind of agree with Elizabeth. There is a tremendous and almost too much effort of research that's happening from the county and state level. And so we don't want to spend too much time repeating that, but I understand having a conduit to get that information to people if we need it. So I guess my thought is it needs to, again, maybe be more targeted at just a distance learning task force unless COVID-19 and a return to school.
That's not what I'm proposing. And I'm also, maybe I'm wrong, but aren't the conditions of distance learning and how they're doing it and hours and such, doesn't that fall under negotiations?
Some things fall under negotiations. So things that are around employees' work conditions or health and safety conditions. Other things do not fall under negotiations, are with within the district's responsibilities to provide. So
I think Linda's missing my whole point is that I know that, you know, I'm asking you guys to look at changing the culture. What I was looking at was the health and safety of everybody, including board members, superintendent, teachers, workers, our children, and our families, because this is, you know, a pandemic. And I see the seriousness of this, you know, and I think that the information that we're getting from the state and the county does not get all the way down. It doesn't do the trickle down effect. And so I think if we had our, you know, our people, you know, the ones who are out there, the, I'm going to call them the frontline workers because they were just named essential. And so I'm not really sure what that means, but, you know, they're the ones who are out there, you know, on the front lines. And so we need to hear, you know, what is happening and how they're feeling about these things. And collaborating. So what I'm hearing is that we're not going to be collaborating, that's going to be the difficult piece here. And that's something that I disagree with. I think that we could probably find a way to collaborate. And I just feel like we need to break the mold so that we can get through this together because it affects every single person.
Vern, so my only thing, I understand what you're saying, and it's about the health and the everything, you know, part of the community, but a couple things is I do feel like, well, maybe I should just ask Heather or Dr. Olson, is there not already a group of people that are evaluating the COVID-19 information throughout the district? And we already have that kind of task force?
So this summer we had a number of work groups. The work groups were predominantly focused on our return to school, just a little bit on distance learning. And then just as we were kind of finishing up that work is when LSEA came to me and said, listen, we don't feel safe coming back. You know, would you please consider something else? And then within days, the rest of the state kind of went the same direction that we did. It is time to start that work again because, you know, I think things need to settle for just a week or two so that people can catch their breath. I think everything that each of you said in the opening comments is true. People are stressed out beyond belief. Just the level of change and the level of work, in addition to the things that are going on in the world with the fires and Black men being shot. People are incredibly stressed out. So I think, you know, a period of time to rest, but then it really is time to start to think about what are the entry points back to school. When San Mateo comes off the monitoring list, what will some steps be? And I think one of the things you're going to hear tonight in the return to school report is that the governor has talked about some entry points for students with special education and ways to do that. So it is time to resume that work again. We had some great success this summer, and even if we didn't use the plan initially, there are some great structures of that. And then we do need to think about how do you implement those, and what does that really look like, and what does that look like at the site? So that would be a collaborative structure. It was very evenly 1/3 CSEA, 1/3 LSEA, about 1/3 administrators, from all schools, all from CSEA. We had a bunch of different jobs, so that we were getting a varied opinion in that one. So I think that would be one venue of doing that. Or if we do something like this with the task force, maybe that could be some of the work that could be happening. I mean, I don't know that I don't want to change the purpose of the task force on that end, but there's still a fair amount to do for the details of planning.
My other question is, are the unions involved in those conversations?
In terms of the work group,
With that work group? Yeah, with that particular work group, are the unions involved? Because I think
so very much so. I mean, it was staff that were either volunteered or identified, but LSEA had a really significant, there was one LSEA member on each one of the work groups. CSEA, again, I think there was a CSEA member. Some groups were a little bit more LSEA than CSEA, depending on what the particular focus was. Health and safety was a little bit more classified staff than teaching staff. So that's definitely a venue for involvement. What I would say to that, Trustee Burkini, is I think with that isn't that's really doing some of the planning. And ultimately what we did say is that final decisions typically aren't well made by committee consensus, but certainly input that came from that work group was, had we returned to school, we would have seen that in place right now.
Are those work groups ongoing? Are they still continuing?
We took a little pause. We finished it about the end of July. Again, thinking that we were mostly done until it came time to do the site planning to return to school. And so right at about that time is when I came to you, probably the end of July, I came to you and said, please, let's all start in distance learning. But it's definitely time to start them.
So out of those particular groups, if we reconvene them, could the unions give us a report out of that, or would that be appropriate? Because I think the goal of this is to get their voices in here somewhere.
Absolutely.
It seemed like you had a big participation in those groups, if I remember right. In fact, you expanded the groups because there was so much participation that if they had a point, if they could report out at our board meetings, it seems like they're functioning very well, and you don't want to reinvent the wheel at this point.
We had about 53 people participate in those groups. Now, I will say it's a little easier to do when you're not working. And so with the venue was that we'd meet from either, a group would meet from 9 to 11 and another group would meet from 1 to 3. And then we'd all come back and report out. But we could figure out what the school version of that would be.
Heather, I thought that the work group was just done and finished. And that's what made it feel incomplete to me as far as, what I'm proposing. So are they done and finished?
No, they're not done and finished. I think it is time to start to think about returning to school. So I think the next steps of that would be reconvening the groups and figuring out who wants to do that along at the same time. It would be probably after school. But it's certainly something that we could bring back up. We're not done with work groups. I thought it was a great structure, actually, in terms of, but again, the benefit was we had people that were highly invested in the outcome, and they had a little bit of time to do that work. I think if we could find some structures to do that, that would be fantastic.
So in the work groups, were some of the concerns revolved around the health and going back, somebody has COVID, what are we going to do? Is that whole cohort going to have to be quarantined for 14 days? And so I just want to stay focused on, that, and, that people are just concerned about their health and returning back to work. And, that's why I proposed, the task force or the committee. So I think we also need to work on the communication of this, because, we weren't even really sure if this was still happening. And so that's why I'm asking that we have something that's more formal and on the agenda, so that we can be updated and so the community can be updated. And so I don't want to get too far off on what I'm proposing. What I'm proposing is a collaboration with LSEA, CSEA, the principals and admin, in creating a task force or a committee where they're looking at the science and the data, and when it's safe to go back to school in the different stages. And just recently, the president made them essential workers. So I want to make sure that our district is hearing their voice and what is going on. And I understand, what Elizabeth and Linda are saying about the information that is coming from the state and the county. It's just not trickling down, and it's coming in, I think, 6 emails before this meeting on the changes that were happening or new things. So, it's going to take an effort for this group of people before each board meeting, to come together and say, this is where we're at. Pacifica now has 200 cases, and we're not where we need to be. So we need to, not move on to the next stage. That is what I'm talking about. And if that's something that the work that you were doing with the group, in the summer, if that's what it was focused on, then, that's okay. I'm not saying that, we take the superintendent's voice away, but so that we're making sure we're hearing everybody's voice, and then making a recommendation to the superintendent, who then makes a recommendation to us. But that we're clear on all the different voices that are coming in, so we can make the best decision.
So just to get back to the work group this summer, is because again, the science piece was developing in terms of what is safe to come back and what is not safe to come back. And there were several questions around, we just want to know what happens when there's a case at our school. Are you going to close down the whole school? Are you going to close down the wing? Does that class go home? The county's pandemic framework has been updated as of August to give some very specific examples. There's never a textbook like if A, then B. We have seen this week that there were, some situations where it was pertinent to one situation to respond in one way, and in another situation to respond in another way. And so I think that's not committee decision, that's getting input. I consulted with Superintendent Nancy McGee on that and that response. So in terms of choosing when to come back and when not to come back, that wasn't the purview of the work groups there, but they certainly did very intensely and loudly, like, we're not coming back until we know the answers to these things. And the pandemic framework has been filled out in that way that I think would provide enough answers to that. But it really is, it's like, we paused that work for principals to come back, and right at about that time is when we had I think it was our regularly scheduled meeting with our weekly check-in with LSEA, and they just said, listen, these numbers are going up. I get that, Pacifica may be low enough, but we have lots of people that live in Daly City. We have people that come and use our beaches. It's going to be in Pacifica soon enough. And they came to me and I listened. I know that the rest of the state went that way, but I did listen to what they said. And so I don't know what the right answer is for that. I think, we've talked about a lot of things tonight in terms of initially, this was a different conversation last week. And I think if, in fact, we want to go with the terms of a formal task force, we probably should think about putting it on as an agenda item, just very specifically so that the public would know that we're talking about that. I think, I don't know.
So I've heard so much here, and I think one of the things that's crystal clear is Trustee Villalobos is coming from a sort of a focus point, which is really answering a question of when to return. And what we've also heard from other people is it's also important to consider how, and how are we delivering services, and how do we make that transition. As it is, right, I think we've had some great discussion here, and I see I put stock in everybody's point of view here. As this is stated on the agenda today, this is super vague. So for me to vote on something, I have to vote on something that's really rather detailed, right? In terms of, okay, and Laverne pointed out the structure of the of what the task force or committee, whatever you want to call it, would look like. But I think we also need to have a very strict goal of this task force. My other concern is what if the task force doesn't work out? I'm not sure if I'm prepared to just sign off and say, sure, we're going to have a task force until COVID's over. Right. I think that we have to be able to make an accommodation if it's really not working and we don't feel that it's productive, that we will not continue with it, or we'll make changes to how it works. So that kind of scares me a little bit. I mean, this is really tough stuff to do. The other things that I heard here were, there's some of this work, in particular, more the how that has been happening in these work groups already. So some of that work has already been going on. The other thing that I heard is the need for communication, right? And the need for some body within the district to take all of the information from above and try to distill it and then report it back out. And that can be interpreted and communicated out through various different lenses, and the task force sounds like a good medium to do that. And then of course there's the communication from the bottom up, from the staff themselves and how they're feeling, and drawing upon their expertise. And for me, it's we should be leveraging their voice, not just on the when, very important, but also on the how, right? And that's where I was going before when I was asking, well, how narrowly focused is this? Might it also just be broader? So there's a lot here. What I suggest is that a more formal item get put on the agenda that is sketched out, that we can talk a little bit more about and then vote on. That's what I would like to see, but I'm just putting that out there. I'd like to hear from my colleagues.
I'd like to see a way to work with the work groups that we already have, maybe expanding them out and letting them report out in the board meetings. But they seem to be going very well, very successful, and it seemed like everybody was communicating very well in those groups. So I'd like to see more focus on that than trying to start yet another group. that, like you said, that you're setting in a box there, because this group has already been working very well.
Other colleagues?
Well, I think I understand what Laverne is looking for. I don't think that it's coming across the way it needs to. Like I said, I think this is more about community and collaborative effort, not so much about information. So I agree that this probably needs to be fleshed out better so that we can actually vote on something very specific. That's where I am. I think I think we have to have it. Maybe I'll talk to you, Laverne, me and you, and try to figure out a way to flesh this out in such a way that it's more about, again, collaborative effort, community, because that's the only way we're going to get through this pandemic. And it makes sense to me what you're trying to do. It just doesn't. When we discuss it, we're not discussing a specific idea that is clear to everyone. And I think that's where we're getting stuck. And we've been on this for an hour, and we can't be on, clearly we're not all on the same page. So we can't vote on anything until we are on the same page.
I agree with everybody. Just want maybe a little more clarity, or just some guidelines, then we could have it in the agenda next time.
So are you wanting me to write up a proposal?
I don't think it needs to be so much a proposal. Like I said, I think me and you have to talk, because I think at least I feel like I understand where you're trying to go. I just don't think it's clear, and I'm not exactly sure how to flesh it out. So it's more of a, let's sit down and talk about it. And maybe it's not a task force. Like I said, this is about building it's a collaborative effort community situation. It's about getting together so that communication and information, not gathering information, not being the source of information, but the information is free flowing from the teachers to the board. Am I in the vicinity?
You are in the vicinity, but there's a big but there. It's that we need to be listening to our partners. We need to be listening to LSEA and CSEA, not just the broad guidelines that we have at the top, because we're a unique district. Every district's doing something different. And my understanding was the work group, got everybody, into 100% distant learning. But then there was no more discussion or no more dates on when they were going to meet again or what was going to be discussed. And so I think we need clarity there too. And maybe, we've done a lot of talking and a lot of good ideas, came out. Maybe meeting with the superintendent individually and separating what is a negotiating item and what is not. So that's not part of the committee. But at the same time, I want to know, how did you get through those health and safety things with staff there during the work groups? I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah. So I think what we have to do is table this. I definitely want to chat with you to get a better, more clear idea, and then come back with like a proposal that's more structured in a way that everyone is on the same page about what we're voting on, because we are not on the same page.
Can I just leave you guys with one thought? Okay, close to, and these are just the reported educators that have passed. Jordan Bird, 19, custodian from Tallahassee. Lisa Burhanen, 50, a paraprofessional from Pennsylvania. Gerald Glisson, 46, principal from New Jersey. David Freeman, 46, superintendent from Texas. Darla Checketts, 58, teacher from Utah. And the list just goes on. Roscoe Taylor, 43, food service, Indianapolis. Clara Lee Williams, 51, teacher, Louisiana. That's where I'm coming from. This is affecting all of us. And so I think that all of us need to listen to each other when we're thinking about the different stages and going forward. But I agree, we need more discussion on it.
I think this has been a great discussion with a lot of good ideas. For me, it would be most helpful if the scope could be really clearly defined as to what the task force envisioned would be, because I think we all have different ideas, and I actually think you were very clear, Laverne, in what you see the task forces as being, and it's more of a when and how can we come back safely, right? And I was thinking that maybe they could take on a little more. But anyway, if you could put that together, I would love to have further discussion about this. And I think that talking with the Superintendent Olson individually about this as well is a great idea.
Thank you, Jesse.
So we're going to table this one, and we are going to go on to item 10B, which is the return to school update with Dr. Heather Olson.
Okay, we will move along through this quickly. Our purpose tonight is just to update you on some of the work that's been happening. This is a truly unprecedented time in so many different ways, but I too want to recognize our staff for the work that they have done. It's been very, very hard. I don't think there's an educator here that would not say that this has probably been the hardest beginning of school in our careers, and I think we will remember it often. But we're going to report out on some of our enrollment, some of our some of the actions around employee health and safety. We want to update you on our hiring. Lucy will talk to you about instruction, professional development, technology. And then we will have an opportunity Julie Carrillo will talk about special education as well, following Mr. Lucy's presentation. So we will try to move quickly, but we will entertain any questions that you have at the end. So Dr. Carrillo, will you start us off with enrollment?
Sure, thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight. I want to also just echo Heather's comments around just acknowledging the staff, and from an enrollment standpoint, it's really been truly inspiring to see the staff work so hard, particularly those that are working around the clock to support the needs of enrollment. I want to just give a shout out to Barbara Smith and Nicole Ortega, Christy Novak, our school secretaries, our site principals, that really everyone has this goal of doing the best we can to make the start of school be as successful as possible given these circumstances. As everyone knows, we have been able to offer 3 different learning platforms for families this year: distance learning, the continuum model, and our homeschool program. And I think that's really wonderful that our families here in Pacifica do have 3 very different options when it comes to their learning needs this summer and their family needs, along with our staff. And so grateful for that. Just to give you an update of where some of our numbers are at, we currently, as of today, have just over 3,000 students enrolled, 3,042 students altogether. Of those numbers, roughly about 80 of our students are currently enrolled in our homeschool program. We are in the process of still bringing on a few more families, or getting families to the right program that's meeting their needs. And it's a lot of work to process all those papers and documents, particularly when it is only a few people. So I just really applaud the efforts of everyone doing the best they can to make sure that students and families are where they need to be. In our distance learning distance learning families, we roughly have 423 students. And of the remaining, we have roughly 2,539 in our continuum. So that's roughly where our numbers are.
I'm actually going to interrupt you, Julie, and just say that the 423 are the elementary students. And if we take into account TK to 8, it's closer to 600.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that clarification. So we're excited that we have those options for families, and working to make sure that we can do what we can to make sure everybody's in the best spot we can, given our staffing and our capacity.
Okay, Josie.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to talk about our health and safety group. So the Return to School Health and Safety Group met weekly from June through August. Utilizing the 4 pillars, a plan was created for the safe return to school. The charge of the health and safety group was to protect the health of students and staff through consistent use of essential protective equipment and implementation of hygiene, physical distancing, and cleaning practices. Although students are not yet back in school, the plan is in place to ensure a safe return. With regards to employees, the district participated in a mass personal protective equipment order with the San Mateo County and distributed essential PPE supplies to all sites. Signage was installed and equipment was purchased for cleaning staff, such as disinfecting machines. The details of the health and safety plan were presented to the board on July 15th and posted on our website. And now Alexis O'Flaherty will provide an update on human resources and staffing.
Thanks, Josie. I wanted to share an update regarding the hiring of certificated staff for the 2020-2021 school year. We hired 36 general education and special education teachers, which includes 9 special education teachers and 27 general education teachers. We also filled 3 school psychologist positions. In addition, we have filled the 23 TK through 8th grade full year distance learning classes. We are currently waiting for the Department of Justice clearance for 2 of our teachers, which typically takes 24 to 72 hours after the employee completes the live scan process. Once the teachers are cleared to teach, they will begin with their students. At that time, students in general education and special education will be taught by their teacher of record. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that was a part of every single interviewing panel that we held, and it definitely took a team effort. So thank you to everybody. Mr. Lucy will now report on instruction, professional development, technology, and student engagement.
Mr. Lucy, you are muted.
Oh man, I hate when other people don't do that and I don't do it. Much has been accomplished in a short amount of time. Instruction began at a distance last Thursday, but preparation for the start of the year began back in June. Pacifica School District, guided by the input and survey responses from the community, were divided into work groups to begin plan for the reopening and specifically Distance Learning 2.0. Over 30 of our teachers participated in a distant instruction key tools for engagement course provided by the San Mateo County Office of Education in partnership with the San Mateo County Community College District. Then, during the August 17th and 18th professional development days, teachers participated in 2 accelerated learning workshops, one focused on math and the other on English language arts literacy, facilitated by the New Teachers Project. Teachers were guided in ways to effectively address students' unfinished learning from the spring and leveraging the distance learning format to re-engage students academically. All teachers were also provided an electronic and hard copy of the distance learning playbook and were introduced to an overview of 2 of the modules within the playbook. The accelerated learning workshops and the distance learning playbook preview were just jumping off points for a continued learning around effective distance learning practices and identification of standards and strategies to address learning loss from the spring. With regards to technology and technology support, thanks to the work of our district IT department and to the site's library media technicians and staff, Chromebooks were distributed to students who needed the device to participate and engage in distance learning. Most of our Chromebooks from all of our sites were distributed out to students. When we get the 2,300 Chromebooks ordered in late September, we will be able to distribute a Chromebook to every Pacifica school district student. We also had over 350 requests for hotspots. We were given 40 hotspots from San Mateo County Office of Education and purchased 200 more. They recently arrived, and we are working with sites to get these hotspots out to those who need them to participate in distance learning. The tech team of Christy Novak, Barbara Smith, Nelsie Cindino, and Eric Hernandez have worked hours and through last weekend to ensure our network and student information system are up and running, which include updating student enrollment, staff, and class rostering within Synergy. They have also worked to continue to work on getting our district-wide subscriptions available to teachers, and it has been nothing less of a heroic effort by this very small team. And then the teachers, who with the support from their support staff and admin, have weathered and persevered through some tech hiccups and unexpected barriers to connect with their students starting this past Thursday, the first day of school. They have been focused on the challenge of connecting with their students and building a class community and school community while being at a distance. Year-long distance learning teachers in particular have added challenge of establishing a class community while supporting student connections to their home school. This has been a joint effort from the school staff and the distance learning teachers. All teachers have begun to share their schedules both daily and weekly with their students and families based on a learning block schedule that adheres to the required minimum number of daily instructional minutes for each grade level. They have taken daily attendance since day one and followed the participation and engagement guidelines provided by the state by balancing synchronous and asynchronous instructional time. We are waiting to receive these guidance from the state on how this will be documented and reported. As new students were added or moved between the programs, it was amazing how the teachers were able to begin the year so smoothly, considering they were all doing this for the very first time. The teachers, support staff, and families have embraced the idea that we are all learning together to provide the best possible learning experience for our students. And this can only occur when we intentionally support each other. Teachers have teamed up to collaborate and plan by sharing resources and effective distance learning strategies. They have established Google Classrooms where resources and supports are teachers and provided for teachers. This is still so much there is still so much more work and learning left to do to continue to improve on teaching, learning, supporting, and community building, all from a distance. But it's nice to know that we can do this together even when we're apart. And I'm handing it back over to Julie.
Yep.
Thanks. I want to share just a little bit about some updates from special education. A couple of points I want to just highlight tonight. First of all, I also want to just share my appreciation for our special education staff, our teachers, our support staff, who have been really creative about finding ways to connect with their families and their students. And I had an opportunity to join a few classes this week where it was really wonderful to just see the faces of our students who are excited and eager, coming to a new school, coming to a new class, or just returning to meet their friends again. It was really inspiring to be part of it, and a good reminder that there still was that magic of the first day that we tried so hard to recreate. And it's really commendable from our teachers to be able to be fostering those relationships. So a couple of sort of updates from our world is that just some insight from the state level, and it was announced on August 14th that our governor, Gavin Newsom, along with our State Board of Education President, Linda Darling-Hammond, had announced ways that students are able to start coming back onto campus in small settings, provided that they work with their local public health agencies. And so I was real curious to get a lot of information about this and to get clarity on what that actually means. So I just want to share with you a little bit that I found out. And this was something that was discussed today in our special education staff meeting for both our classified and our support staff. I think it is, many of us would agree that it's really important that our students can be getting the best support and care that they need, and that students with disabilities, there's added challenges when it comes to distance learning. So we're interested in looking at ways that safely allow for this to happen when it's safe to do so. So what our county has done is provided with us a waiver, and this is for any student that would just be kindergarten through 6th grade. You can actually apply for a waiver that would allow for modified in-person learning. And it's a fairly involved process, and it's something that currently there are not any other schools in the county that are doing in-person learning, and that may be changing as time goes on, but there's the process that would be involved is considering the background information of the district and the people involved and the need for that, but also with that a process of consultation that would include engaging with our labor, with our community members and parents around how that return to school would look. And then from that, you would be able to apply for that waiver, which would be a 14-day waiting period until you'd be able to bring students back in some capacity. Another way in which some students are able to engage in one-to-one contact would be through assessments. And we have looked at and have already established some protocols that would be put in place that we've looked at through the county and our resources that would be a fairly robust way of students coming back onto our campus, and everything from including 24 hours prior to that child being on campus, there would be various waivers formed, a consent form, but also a series of questions that would each person would be engaged in before they'd be able to safely return to campus. So it's a way to look at how to engage in that once we felt as a community that this was the right step to do in a safe manner. So that is a little of the update that I've received about how that reflects on our county level. Another thing that our staff is working on very diligently right now for our special education families is to develop what's called a summary or a distance learning plan summary. What that really is a explanation sheet or a summarized version of how each child's individualized education plan or IEP is going to be utilized in distance learning. It's a confusing time. It's hard for families to understand how this is going to work. And it's a way for our staff to communicate directly with families to say the services will look like this. They'll be delivered in this method of delivery, this service, the schedule will be this point, and then also identify a point person for families too, so that they have real clear information around what those plans will look like while we are in distance learning. So that'll be an important piece. And one other piece of information that's also come out is Senate Bill 98, which indicates that now moving forward, as we have our annual IEP meetings and triannual IEP meetings, there will be a way in which that IEP team will start to identify how IEPs will be addressed in the event of a disaster, or if we needed to be off campus for any reason for more than 10 days. And so that'll be something that will be coming up in all of our IEP discussions, and the teams will have that discussion at that time. So again, want to just comment on the work of our staff to be working diligently. You know, this is the time, if we imagine that we were in person again, this would be the time that our providers would be working closely with our gen ed teachers. I know many of our staff have been doing that already, and they're juggling a lot of challenging schedules, but are doing their best to make sure that there are opportunities for every child to still be mainstreaming and still have their services provided in a way that's meaningful. And so we're going to continue to be communicating and working at meeting those needs. I also want to talk just for a moment on our social emotional learning. As you may know, we are looking at 3 different social emotional learning curriculums that we've received access to from the county through a grant, and we are reviewing some of those selections. We've had some of our members who've been working on from that summer group that we mentioned, the wellness team. They've had a great insight into looking at some of those materials and talking. Also want to just acknowledge the work of that group. They've been able to produce some amazing resources for our staff and teachers. And in addition to offering them resources, one resource I want to mention just out here tonight to make sure people might see in light of some of the conversations we've had is Teaching Tolerance. It's an important resource for teachers to use to be guiding really valuable conversations for everyone. And there are materials such as those available to staff right now to be utilizing. We've talked at length about the importance of just establishing the community and in the classroom, and that teachers are focusing on building those relationships right now. And with that, I'm going to hand that over back to Will to talk a little bit about attendance. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I think, Will, did you talk about attendance? I thought you did, right?
Yeah, I talked about attendance as regards to taking attendance and then also in.
Perfect. So I will just bring it home and conclude this around communication. And one of the reasons why this was a tough start of school was the different communications that parents were getting. So we did have some problems with our student information system. And as we were making some changes, those changes were not holding or not being retained. And so teachers had different class lists than we were sending messages from the district to a different set of students than teachers had on their list. And so that was a communication nightmare, I think, in terms of the outcome. But what we did is we brought people together in a morning Zoom meeting, explained what happened, and gave us some time to fix the issue with Synergy. And by lunchtime, shortly after 1 o'clock, the classrooms were able to meet at that point. And so it was a little bit of a hiccup for the distance learning families that were in TK through 5th grade. But all in all, when they got the teachers and they got the Zoom links, school went as planned. And so communication is going to continue to be a high priority in this. The more we can communicate, the better. And you'll be seeing some communications from the district, keeping our website updated, cleaning up the use of our tools through the student information system Synergy, but also having some very focused groups through School Messenger so that not all people have to get all emails. So one of the things that happened with the communication effort is I was not able to just communicate with the families that chose full year distance learning. So I had to send something out to all 3,000 families, and it resulted in some communication. So we will continue to work hard to do better. I know that your principals are communicating with you and starting to talk about back to school nights. Cabrillo and Sunset Ridge have their back to school nights, and the students that are a part of the full year distance learning, the teachers that are involved at both Cabrillo and Sunset Ridge will also continue to have their back to school nights tomorrow. And that we will bring we plan to meet with the full year distance learning teachers next week so that we can all get on the same page. I would invite you with any questions that you may have. We've presented a lot of information, but quite frankly, a lot has been accomplished since we met 3 weeks ago. We started, as Julie said, 3 programs, and so we are happy to hear your questions.
Great. So I think before we have our questions, we do have one public comment from Kristen Fong on item 10B. So I wanted to let her speak first, and then the board can weigh in. Oh boy, Kristen, you're on.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just really want to praise the teachers and the staff. We all know that this is just an unprecedented time, and this is just the craziest of start of years. And I have commiserated with the staff. I have tried to support them as all the parents and people in this district have done. The wonders they have done for our kids in in all three models. I can't really speak to the homeschool, but I have three children, and I have one in continuum and one in hybrid. What they managed to do, being up since 4:15 in the morning the day of school, waiting for their school list and trying to be as prepared as they could, managing these tech issues that has been brought up, they're just incredible, and we are so lucky to have them. I know that the district is working so hard on such a limited staff, and I really appreciate Heather mentioning that we are trying with the communication and we are going to do better. It's been reiterated many times in many meetings by staff, by parents. Just over communicate as best you can just to alleviate that anxiety. And as far as moving forward with communication, I think it was wonderful that the TK through 5, with all that uncertainty, and we've got subs, and I feel for those kinder families whose first real experience of school was not only from a computer and not in person, but then you've got a sub on top of it. And I think that the district did a really great thing by holding a meeting that first day to try and comfort those families that are feeling so uncertain about things. Moving forward with that communication, I think it's really, really important to have that communication with all distance learning families. I know personally, I can only speak that I've got a 7th grader in distance learning. And while I have been so amazed by Distance Learning 2.0, the amazing educators that we have, there is a lot of uncertainty that has not been explained to us regarding the fact that we chose full distance learning, yet our district assignment said that we are placed in a continuum model, and that we're hearing that we've been moved from our home site, and we've been placed in Valimar School because that's where all 7th graders went. They went there, IBL. I get that it's due to numbers and money and grading and whatever, but that has not been explained. We just keep hearing through the grapevine that it's a good thing. I'm not terribly concerned at the moment because there's 2 educators there. I don't know what I don't know what the numbers or the ratio is with staff and children. I just know that my child is in a mixed model class. And while I am not initially concerned because we're all distance learning at the moment, it is of concern to me if and when we do go back to that hybrid approach, because how does that work when you've got a mixed model classroom? So those types of things would be wonderful to be explained further to the distance learning families. I know it also applies to 8th graders in the district. It's been said it's a good thing, and also that it's just on paper. We're here. It's hard when we want clear communication from the district, and I want to take district information, not rumors you see on social media or rumors flying through the grapevine. I want official stuff so that I can plan and understand what it is and how I can help best facilitate this learning experience. We're hearing it's just on paper, so you still kind of are part of your school site, but you're not. So all of that is just very confusing. So moving forward with communication, I would really appreciate, as I'm sure other families would as well, just clearing up that communication even further and making it stronger so that we can all have that collaboration. We can all be on the same page, because right now it's very wishy-washy and uncertain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'm not sure if you wanted to respond at all, Superintendent Olson, or if we should go straight into questions, but I'll allow you to respond if you'd like. And you're on mute.
Most annoying habit ever, right? So the way that the distance learning classes were made is in 7th and 8th grade, the challenge is that typically those are single subject teachers, and with the smaller number of students that we had, all of the students that came from IBL are served by IBL. And then we had a very small number, maybe 20 students in 8th grade that came from the 3 other K-8s. Those students are also being served at IBL by single subject teachers. In the 7th grade model, we're using 2 teachers at Valimar, Laura Vuskovic, and a new teacher, Jennifer Jung, who are a dynamic pair. And we will be figuring out the details of how that's going to happen next week. One of the trends across the district is that many schools have a very low 6th grade, but also sometimes have a very low 7th grade. And in terms of the way that it was working at Valimar, is there were kind of two options, is that we could have gone with 3 teachers for 7th and 8th grade, which would have been a 7th and 8th and a 7-8 combo. And that's not really a good model for most 7. It wouldn't have worked in the way that they wanted to do it. And so one way to do that was to use the distance learning as also. But we will figure out the particulars of how that happens when we go back. I know we will be able to figure that out. I just don't have an answer for Ms. Fong at this time. But it is definitely a solvable problem. The other good news for both the 7th and 8th grade is I feel like those kids are getting a very strong instructional program, both in 7th grade and in 8th grade. So that would be my response. And so as I work with the Valimar staff around what that will look like when we go back to hybrid, is I will certainly meet with the 7th and 8th grade. And quite honestly, Ms. Fong is not incorrect, is that we did say that you would remain in your school for the purpose of enrollment. That seemed to be very important to families. In 7th and 8th grade, where we have multiple classes, to have multiple sections across multiple computer programs, it became very, very difficult. So we can either figure out the answer. I can communicate that with families, but if I can just have another week to meet with the staff, that would be very helpful.
Thank you very much for your response. I want to open it up to my colleagues. Questions or comments for the district staff?
I don't have any question or comment. You sounded great.
I just want to thank everybody for the tremendous amount of work that went into that by everybody.
Thank you.
So I guess I had just 2 quick questions. First of all, thanks to all the district staff and all the school staff for the crazy effort that you've been pulling on this. It's just really clear the passion and commitment you all have for our kids. I have 2 quick questions. Just one is for Mr. Lucy, and that is, have you thought about when testing is going to begin? I'm pretty sure, you're not even thinking about the summative tests at all, or whether we're even going to have those this year. You probably have to hear from CDE, but certainly the formative or the diagnostic tests. Do you know when those are going to be kicking in?
Yeah, so at this point, what we're doing is, and what we've learned from those workshops that we had around accelerated learning, because you have to address this issue of the learning loss that happened in the spring. Yep. But what their suggestion was, and this is kind of the way we're going about it, is we're looking at our own adopted core curriculum, and we're looking at those formative assessments within those curriculums as our starting point, because the idea is really chunk those formative assessments up into smaller sections. So like if they are starting a unit 1, they would have an assessment on what would be covered in that unit 1, and then they would be able to assess where they're at and then plan and fill in the gaps along the way. So that's where we're at now. We do not, and we have not, and we have not yet issued like a district-wide assessment calendar about how that's happening. We really, those beginning assessments will be based off the curriculum, based off those core curriculum and those like for math it'd be bridges.
Sure.
So that's how we're starting off.
It sounds like a good strategy. Try to focus in on what they need help on, immediately, from sort of addressing learning loss from almost last year, right? Yeah. That's what you're doing. So, okay, thank you. The other question that I had or comment was for Dr. Carrillo, and that is, thank you so much for mentioning the socio-emotional learning and mental health. I'm wondering what has happened to this county-supported pilot that we were selected for. Could you just say a few words on that?
Yeah. In fact, today I was just listening in on a meeting with Molly Henricks over at who's a community member, parent here as well. But we were sitting in on a seminar, and we're going to be following up within next week. We'll be making our selection from the 3 different curriculum choices that we have, and they are different, and we want to make sure that we're finding the right need that's going to, meet the needs of kindergartners all the way through 8th graders. So we anticipate, this process has also sort of been hindered by a little bit of power outages and such that it was pushed out an additional week. And so we're eager to get some information about that. And once that happens, we expect that we'll be having that the curriculum available to our staff and students along with the training by the end of September.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. Those are my only 2 questions. Are there other questions from my colleagues on the board?
No questions from me.
No questions.
And I see a shaking head. Okay. With that, we are going to go to item 10C, Pacifica School District Demographic Data 2019 to 2020. Ms. O'Flaherty, please.
I'm going to just jump in there and take credit for the errors that are in the presentation. This was something that as we're starting school, I developed the presentation because I wanted to allow Ms. O'Flaherty the opportunity to do multiple interviews with new teachers. So any of the errors that are in that presentation belong to me.
Okay.
No need, Dr. Olson. Thank you. So this presentation includes the race and ethnicity data for our students and staff for the 2019-2020 school year. Will you be able to share your screen?
That I lost connectivity, and then when I came back, I am no longer host. Suzanne, could you make me host again, and then I'll share my screen.
Great, thank you. So I will continue, and I will talk slowly so we can continue moving on. So again, this presentation includes the race and ethnicity data for our students and staff for the 2019-2020 school year. Student data was provided by CalPADS, and the staff data was taken from the EPIC system within Financial 2000. The first slide, which we will see in just a moment, is the data reflected in numbers. But I would like to move to the second slide, which shows the data in a graph. So I'll pause just for a moment. I believe it's the second attachment. I believe, yeah.
Yep, you want the second one.
Thanks, Will. If you don't mind me going down to this, the next slide. Thank you. So the red bar represents the percent of students. The purple bar represents the percent of classified staff. The orange bar represents the percent of certificated staff. And the maroon bar represents the percent of management staff. The greatest percent of students is white at 40%, with the second highest being Latino or Hispanic at 26%. It is then followed by the categories of 2 or more races: Filipino, Asian, Black, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, and American Alaskan Native. There were 0 other non-white or missing responses. When looking at the data for the classified staff, the majority is white with over 53%, followed by 23% Latino or Hispanic and 8% Asian. Classified staff is then made up of almost 7% Filipino, 1.5% of 2 or more races, and other races other than non-white, as well as Native Hawaiian and Black. There were also 1 American Alaskan Native and 1 missing response. The vast majority of the certificated staff is white by at 80%, followed by 9% Asian, 4.5% Latino or Hispanic, 3% Filipino, and there are 4 missing or non-responses. There were 0 of the other categories listed. The management staff is 73% white, and there is 1 staff member for each of the categories of Asian, Filipino, Latino or Hispanic, and other non-white. The categories of race and ethnicity are not represented, the other categories of race and ethnicity are not represented by the management team. Our certificated and management staff race and ethnicity is disproportionate to our students' race and ethnicity. I would also like to acknowledge that the phrases used in surveying our staff and students are not all encompassing of all identities. However, these are the race and ethnicity categories that are provided to us by the state of California via CalPADS and or EPICS. Are there, what types of questions do you have?
I don't have any questions. Can we see the table of numbers in the second slide? For some people, it might be easier to look at those, right?
Completely.
So you can sort of go across the most important thing, at least I think, are the percentages,
Absolutely.
and you can compare the second column numbers, which is the percentage distribution of students across the racial ethnic categories, and then you can compare them to the percentage of classified, certificated, and management staff, and then see which are disproportionately represented. That is the staff that are disproportionately representative relative to the students, right? So anyway, I mean, it's pretty clear here, and it's something that Trustee Villalobos has been sort of mentioning, for a while now, and that is, the percent of certificated staff who are Hispanic is way under the percentage of students who are Hispanic, right? That's sort of the clearest, I think, example where we really need to push for some diversification in our certificated staff. That's that was the huge takeaway for me. And then the counter to that, right, is that, wow, we have 40.5% of our students are white, yet 80% of our certificated staff. And Ms. O'Flaherty, you already said this in the column chart that we saw, but sometimes it's easier to just sort of see the numbers here, right? That there's sort of twice as much of a representation of certificated white staff as there are students. So the certificated staff that includes, that's not just teachers. It's a majority teachers, is my understanding, but that probably includes principals as well, right?
So the principals are included in the management.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's the same story there, right? Where management
exactly.
73%. But anyway, that was just a point of clarification. I wasn't really sure where principals lay and all this. Anyway, those are my observations. I mean, that's it's pretty clear cut here, but I'd like to open the floor to my colleagues on what they saw.
Well, nothing about these numbers surprised me, so there's that. The question I have is, now that we can clearly see the disparities in terms of management classified staff compared to our students, what's the game plan?
That is a great question. So as we had mentioned, which I had mentioned at the last board meeting, was first we ensure that the teachers or the staff member have the correct or the proper credential or certificate. But you're absolutely right. We do need to have a game plan, and that's something that I am extremely aware of. And we are going to address it. And to be quite honest with you, I don't have a clear game plan, but it's something that we will talk about in cabinet and work together to create one. But I agree with you 100% that something needs to change.
Alexis, this is Laverne. For some reason, I can't see your guys' faces anymore, but I'm just curious. At one of the webinars that I attended, we're talking about, you know, when an African American or Hispanic, you know, child is going to school, you know, they feel differently when they see their teacher, you know, that looks like them. And so one of the things, you know, that comes out of that is when you're recruiting, and I know you've been in this position for just a short time, but maybe you know, when you're recruiting, do you actually go to resources where there might be more minorities, or how does a human resource person, you know, advertise trying to get more minorities into the pool of interviewing? I mean, I know we have to go on who's more qualified, but what do human resource people do? Where do they go so that they can you know, put out the word that we're hiring and looking for American Indian, Asian, Black, Filipino, Hispanic, you know, a different.
I can, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that was just my question, is where do we go so that we can say, hey, we're trying to diversify, you know, our district.
Right, absolutely. So one thing that I will be doing more of is outreach to different universities and colleges to promote Pacifica School District and to get a broader range of people applying for our positions. I'm going to be very honest, I don't know what the outreach has looked like at other universities, but you doing outreach outside of, possibly right outside of our own area, you know, looking beyond the Bay Area, looking beyond the peninsula, looking beyond the Bay Area, to really promote and execute that so that we are opening our doors to more applicants.
I actually have two things that I've learned about this summer in terms of hiring differently, is that sometimes it's getting people in your doors or in your Zoom meetings to apply for your jobs. But the other is when they're there, what are the types of questions that you're asking and what are you specifically looking for? And as we do this work, both as a board and as a staff, is what are we looking for and how do we find that? What are the types of questions that we're asking? That type of thing. That would be one thing. I lost my train of thought on the second one, but I'm glad that we're discussing this because it is very, very important that when students see teachers that look like them, it makes the world of difference. And if a African American student has two teachers that are African American in their career, it really has huge implications for their college going career. And so we know how important it is, and we hear from the board how important it is. So we would like an opportunity, maybe at a different date, to talk to you about what kinds of things we could be doing differently. Or as we work with Nicole Anderson in our racial equity committee, that might be the opportunity to get some other ideas as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Heather, because you know, you and I both are, no, actually, no, we didn't attend hers. I attended Jefferson Union High School District. And one of the things that I learned is that it may be like the questions that we're asking, the interviewing questions that we're asking. And, you know, when you have people of color, they may be in a different culture and think differently about that question. And so how do we ask more sensitive questions to different groups of people? I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yep. But, and sometimes how it comes out is people use the term, we're looking for the right fit. We're looking for somebody that fits here. Right. Well, I actually think we're probably looking for something that fits, obviously, but might look a little different. And then our hires that we have that based on the staff that we have right now. And so being able to verbalize what that is, I think, is really important. And then as we work with the principals around hiring in the spring, I guess you'd use the word calibrating, as like, okay, this is what we're looking for. This is what we said we're looking for. What kinds of questions would get to that information, or how do you make someone, we really want interviewees to be successful. So how do we help pick the questions so that they would be? That's I'm really so glad that we're talking about this, and I'm really so glad to have Alexis, dedicated to the hiring part. I have to say, we did in the summer, there were a few positions that were open that we deliberately did not fill because we knew with distance learning that there would be some shifting of staff. And so rather than involuntarily transfer folks from continuum to distance learning, we did have to do some rapid hiring in just the last week. And like I said, I put together this presentation so that Alexis could spend 4 days in interviews. And we're so very fortunate that there were good candidates. One of the good news about distance learning is not everybody has to live here. Just simply sometimes the cost of living in the Bay Area is exclusive. Or if you grew up in this town, that could sometimes be exclusive as well. And so we had a broader pool of candidates that we were able to choose from. It wasn't dependent on were you going to be able to move here.
One of the things that maybe we could add to this is how many teachers are, out there. How many American Indian teachers have their credentials? How many Asian? How many Black? Like, what are those bigger numbers, so that we can see like some kind of comparison?
That's a great question.
For me, American Indian teachers, my sister's a teacher and my aunt's a teacher. So we've already, lasted through those numbers. But it would be interesting to see how many Asian teachers there are, Black, just so that we can get an idea. So we can have more data so that when we do start doing our work, we can look at it and refer to it.
I remembered the second point that I was going to make is that some of our best teachers that we are able to hire are students that went through the Pacifica School District, and often I've always felt a need to help people see the importance of becoming a teacher, and I think some of our teachers at Sunset Ridge are both graduates of Sunset Ridge, but also recognize the important roles that teachers in their lives played, and so want to provide that for other students. And that's one more avenue of hiring teachers of color, is to help promote our own students to careers in education.
I think you're right. My aunt is always trying to recruit all of my cousins, everybody. Oh, we have this great new program for teachers. You have to be American Indian though, so she's always even self-promoting, trying to get more American Indian teachers to do that. And so, I know that's going the extra mile, but I just think that's interesting.
I just wanted to point out something that a lot of times people want to hire people of color, and often they'll get hired, but you're not able to retain them for long because of the environment. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that if we do hire teachers of color, Black teachers, Indigenous teachers, that we are providing an environment that is not toxic, that is not difficult to navigate, that these teachers and staff feel welcome, that they don't feel isolated, because those are the types of things that make people not want to stay. Mm-hmm. For example, even, I've been in a lot of different environments. For me, I can navigate it, but not everybody, especially a new teacher, may not be able to navigate an environment where they are the only one. That's a thing. You are the only one there. You might feel isolated and you may feel like no one understands how you feel. That we have to make an effort that if we do hire people who look like our students, that we're also providing the support that they're going to need to survive the environment that they are in. So I just want to put that out there that, it's not just about hiring, it's about retention and providing an environment that is safe and inclusive and that makes them feel welcome.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the things that we talked about today is recruiting, the hiring process, interviewing and other pieces to that, and then keeping those teachers, the support that is provided to them. And in general, for all new teachers, that first 5 years is really critical in terms of their career as a teacher. Like, will they remain in that profession? But I appreciate that comment, Kai, because that's absolutely right. Is how do we help people feel like they are that they are included and valued? And so, thank you for those comments. Anything else?
No, I just wanted to thank Trustee Villalobos for pushing for this analysis, and of course Heather and Dr. Olson and Miss O'Flaherty for pulling off the analysis. Thank you so much.
Great.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item 10. I believe we are down to D as in David, tentative agreement between Pacifica School District and Laguna Salada Management Association. Miss O'Flaherty.
Thank you. We are bringing forth today the tentative agreement that was reached between the Pacifica School District and the Laguna Salada Management Association, LSMA. I would like to thank our LSMA partners for their collaboration in reaching this tentative agreement for the 2019-20 school year. The tentative agreement includes an agreement to a one-time off-salary schedule payment of $400 in keeping with the Me Too practice. It is recommended that the board approve the tentative agreement between the Pacifica School District and LSMA.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the tentative agreement between Pacifica School District and Laguna Salada Management Association?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
And I have no questions. Do I have a motion to approve the tentative agreement between Pacifica School District and Laguna Salada Management Association? Oh, I'm going to motion to approve. I will first it. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, sorry,
Okay, who's it going to?
Elizabeth.
Okay, that goes to Elizabeth Bradall. Ms. Campos, will you please take the roll call vote?
Yes. Trustee Bradall,
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Levin,
Yes.
and Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 10E, approval of certificated management salary schedule 2020-2021. Ms. O'Flaherty.
Thank you. The salary schedule, Will, do you mind putting up the attachment B first? Thank you. The salary schedule was revised to reflect positions that changed at the end of the 2019-20 school year. The positions of Director and Coordinator of Instructional Technology were added to the certificated management schedule. The Executive Director of Human Resources, Special Education, and Pupil Services was replaced with a 1.0 FTE Director of Human Resources and a 0.8 FTE Director of Special Education and Pupil Services. The Executive Director of Educational Support Services job title was changed to Director of Educational Support Services. There is no salary change to this position. The Coordinator of Instructional Technology is also included on the certificated management salary schedule. While preparing for this board item, an error was found in the Coordinator of Instructional Technology per diem, which is their daily rate. Therefore, we have fixed the error. So sorry. Well, if you might don't mind. So if you see where it says step A1 at the top, if you go all the way down to where it says the salary is $119,225, the salary is correct. However, the per diem rate that's shown at $614.56, that is not calculated correctly. So we have fixed this per diem rate, which is now $541.93. Well, if you don't mind sharing the updated version.
I think I lost it when.
Okay. No problem.
So sorry.
No problem. You're fine. You're fine. So basically,
I can go find it if you want me to.
No. It's okay. Unless Board of Trustee would like us to find it. So basically, that $614.56 has been changed to $541.93. And you'll see that that is aligned with the assistant principal per diem rate. The coordinator of instruction works 220 days, which is noted on the salary schedule. So that is why this coordinator of instruction salary is more than the assistant principal. In addition, there were no salary increases for the 2020-2021 school year. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the revised 2020-2021 salary schedule for the certificated management.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out that the daily rate across that whole row for the coordinator of instructional technology is an error on the screen right now. So I'm hoping that it's not just that one cell in step A-1, it's across the board. So, but I trust you guys corrected all of that. My only question for you is, how many years does it take on average to get across these columns, which are steps? It's kind of confusing because steps are usually like on teachers' salary schedules. The steps are often rows. But anyway.
Sure. So to move from step A1 to step B2, that's 1 year. So each year they're moving a step up until up until F6, and then you'll see where it says F6. The next step would be G10, which is year 10.
Okay, so those steps are referring to the years. Thank you.
That is correct. And longevity.
Okay, great. Are there any questions from any board members?
I'm just curious, is there human resources, Alexis?
Yes. So the first category is director. Okay. So I will just say that's my position, Director of Human Resources. That's Julie, Director of Special Ed and Pupil Services. And that is Will, Director of, and I always get his wrong, I'm sorry, Director of Educational Support Services.
Thank you for the clarification.
Nope, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Yeah, and Ms. O'Flaherty, I realize how strange it is to refer to sort of a directorship position. It's almost like referring to yourself in third person, right? For those directors, you know. Anyway, thank you so much. Okay, I think I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the approval of certificated management schedule salary schedule 2020-2021.
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Ms. Campos, will you please take the roll vote?
Yes. Trustee Bradall?
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini?
Yes.
Trustee Doggett?
Yes.
Trustee Levin?
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos?
Yes.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're on to item 10F, approval of classified management salary schedule 2020-2021. Ms. O'Flaherty.
Thank you. So the classified management salary schedule was revised. There was only one revision to it, and that is to include the project manager job description or the project manager position. Well, I think it's attachment B. Thank you. So at So you'll see in the middle where it says project manager, we added that position to this classified management salary schedule. There were no salary increases for the 2020-2021 school year. It is recommended that the board approve the revised 2020-2021 salary schedule for classified management to include the project manager position.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions regarding the classified management salary schedule?
Alexis, could you just clarify what the director on the other page, as opposed to this director 1 FOM is?
Director 1 is for facilities and operations management. So that would be George in our, that's a classified position. So that would be George in our facilities and maintenance. And then director, that would be certificated. So that would be Will, myself, Josie. So those are certificated positions. These are classified management positions. Does that clarify, Linda?
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question as well. For the project manager, this position isn't permanent, right? I mean, it's for the workforce housing. So I'm just wondering if that needs to be noted.
It's actually for the bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep. I can let Josie answer that, but it doesn't necessarily need to be noted on there. The pay scale is for the purpose of what we pay the employees.
Okay.
I think the point that's paid for with bond money, not from general fund, I think is maybe what
I see.
Aiming for.
Yeah, and well, also too, that it's a new position. So, you know, how long is she going to be here? Is that just not? But anyways, you answered that question.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
No questions.
No questions.
All right. So do I have a motion to approve the classified management salary schedule 2020-2021?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I will second. Ms. Campos, will you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Trustee Bradall,
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Levin,
Yes.
and Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Item 10G, E9270, Conflict of Interest Code. Dr. Olson.
Okay. So the governing board is required to adopt a conflict of interest code. And the requirements of the code are satisfied if a district adopts a conflict of interest code that incorporates 2 CCR 18730 by reference along with designated positions and disclosure categories. As you see, we have changed the titles of some of those categories, and so we want to make sure that that this is consistent with that. Board members and designated employees annually file the Statement of Economic Interest, the Form 700 that you each fill out in January, February, pursuant to the disclosure requirements of the district's Conflict of Interest Code. So tonight, due to a change of administrative titles, the attached Pacifica School District Exhibit 9270 has been updated to reflect the current designated positions. The board board bylaws 9270 conflict of interest has been attached for background information. So on our new assembly, if we go over to pull up the, Will, do you mind pulling up the 9270 with revisions?
B.
B, please. Perfect. And what you will see as we scroll toward the bottom is the titles of the positions. So Director of Special Education and Student Resources. One of the things that we're doing this year is sometimes you'll see student services and pupil services used interchangeably. We're going to more consistently use student services. And then there's the Director of Educational Support Services and Director of HR. And then the Coordinator of Instructional Technology. I've lost my assembly. So we would ask you to, we'd recommend that you approve 9270, conflict of interest with revisions. Are there any questions?
I have none.
No questions.
No question.
No questions.
No questions.
Ms. Campos, will you please, oh, sorry, do I have a motion to approve E9270 conflict of interest code?
I'll make a motion to approve E9270 conflict of interest code.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Ms. Campos, can we please take a roll call vote?
Yes, Trustee Burdall,
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Levin,
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Great. We're on item 10H, resolution number 2020-08-26-A, authorizing signatures. Ms. Peterson.
Thank you. So this is an annual item that we bring to the board to update the authorized signatures for the district so that we can conduct the daily operations of the business, such as signing off on invoices and contracts and such. So we're asking you to update this authorization, which we would send to the County Office of Education, to update it to Dr. Heather Olson, myself, Will Lucy, Julie Carrillo, and Alexis O'Flaherty as the authorized signers on behalf of the board and the district.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from my fellow board members?
No
No
questions.
questions.
And I have no questions either. I think I heard from everybody there. I think everybody talked at once. Do I have a motion to approve resolution number 2020-08-26-A, authorizing signatures?
I'll
Okay.
make a motion to approve.
And I will second that. Ms. Campos, will you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Trustee Burdall,
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Levin,
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are on item 10I, authorization to execute the pre-development loan agreement with the Housing Endowment and Regional Trust, HART. Ms. Peterson.
Thank you. So this is actually a repeat item. HART has so generously offered the district a loan in order to enable us to do the pre-development of our workforce housing. This exact item was brought to you on March 11th. However, due to the shelter in place and COVID, we did not act on the loan. We did not draw on the loan. And if we did, we would have had to pay it back on June 30th and then bring a new item to you for July 1st. So this is the item for the 2021 school year. They're still generously offering us the loan for $697,991. And we would be able to utilize their loan versus the district's cash. As you know, our cash flow is going to be pretty in dire straits this year because of our state funding. And so being able to utilize the HART loan this year would really help us cash flow wise. So again, it's the same item that you approved in March, and we're just asking you to approve it now with revised dates for the 2021 school year. Any questions or comments?
I have no questions.
No questions.
No questions from me.
No questions.
No question.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the authorization to execute the pre-development loan agreement with the Housing Endowment and Regional Trust, HART?
I'll motion to approve the loan with HART.
And I'll second that. Ms. Campos, will you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Trustee Burdall,
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Levin,
Yes.
and Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're coming around the bend here for the last second to last item, I guess. Item 11, future agenda items.
Perfect. So I want to thank the trustees for being willing to schedule a special meeting on September 30th for the approval of the learning continuity and attendance plan. It needs to be approved by the 30th, but originally our plan was to do the public hearing tonight and to approve it on our board meeting on September 16th, and there is no way we would have ever gotten that done. So on the 16th, we are going to bring to you the learning continuity and attendance plan, and we will be able to detail many of the specific questions that are being asked around distance learning, around the instructional programs in both distance learning and homeschool program and full year distance learning. So I think we'll be able to flesh much of that out and provide you with that information. That will mostly encapsulate the any updates on the return to school. We had talked about a candidate night. I will seek out some more information regarding a candidate night or help facilitating that candidate night. And we will, if we are prepared, bring my contract up for bring to you to extend that. I will be done with my contract in June, and I would be asking you to extend my contract next time if we're prepared to do so. Are there other topics that you would like to put on the agenda?
None at this time for me.
Nothing right now.
Okay.
Nothing right now.
And just to confirm, we're going to put the discussion we had about communication on next time, right?
Yes, I think that's a great idea. And the request last time was to have that early in the agenda, and I think we should continue to have that early in the agenda. So yes, we will. Thank you. Thanks, Laverne. And then hearing no other requests for topics, we will meet on September 2nd and 3rd from 4 to 7 p.m. meeting with Luann Berman Rivera from CSBA to facilitate a board governance workshop. So that will be when we see each other next.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging in there. We're about almost 20 minutes over time, but we've done very, very well and had a great discussion tonight. With that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 9:34 p.m.
Thank you.
All right. Be safe, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.